Good morning from the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of Korolyov on the outskirts of Moscow as we settle in to bring you our live coverage of the return to Earth of 3 of the crew members who were on board the International Space Station for 141 days. At this hour, Soyuz Commander Oleg Kononenko, flanked to his left in the descent module of the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft, Kimiya Yui of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, and NASA flight engineer Kjell Lindgren, who is on the right of Kononenko in the descent module, are in their Sokol launch and entry suits, strapped in their respective seats in the descent module as countdown clocks are ticking backward toward the firing of the Soyuz braking rockets just 18 minutes from now that will begin the Soyuz's descent out of the Earth's atmosphere toward a snowy landing site in south-central Kazakhstan, northeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. We'll talk about the activities in Kazakhstan in just a moment. Here in the Russian Mission Control Center, the flight controllers are watching over their data, preparing to be in discussions with Kononenko throughout the course of the deorbit burn and through the 53 minutes that will transpire between the deorbit burn and the time the Soyuz touches down at that landing site northeast of Zhezkazgan to bring home this 3-man crew following 141 days in space, a 2,256 orbit traverse of the Earth that has spanned 59.6 million statute miles traveled since the Soyuz was launched back on July 23rd to bring this trio to the International Space Station.
Very good. Waiting for 1507 to inhibit the cover. 1507. Copy.
That is a view from external cameras on the International Space Station of the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft that is currently positioned about 12 kilometers away from the orbital outpost. The undocking of the Soyuz from the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing port of the International Space Station occurred earlier today, the undocking occurring on time at 3:49 and 44 seconds a.m. Central Time as hooks opened between the Rosviet and the Soyuz spacecraft, springs on both sides of the docking interface pushed off against one another. This is a replay of the undocking that occurred a few hours ago, and the Soyuz was off to its position for its deorbit burn and the beginning of its descent back into the Earth's atmosphere for its landing that's coming up a bit later this morning. The undocking went by the book 3 minutes after physical separation. The Soyuz thrusters fired for 8 seconds in a separation burn that increased its opening rate from the International Space Station and currently placed the Soyuz at its 12-kilometer distance away from the International Space Station in preparation for the deorbit burn that lies ahead. The deorbit burn that is coming up now in just about 16 minutes will be 4 minutes and 40 seconds, 40 seconds in duration, slowing the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, enabling it to drop out of orbit for its descent back into the Earth's atmosphere. As mentioned before, the countdown clocks here in the Russian Mission Control Center, as well as the flight control room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, ticking backward toward the deorbit burn that's coming up in less than 15 minutes from now. That burn will be the Soyuz braking rockets firing for 4 minutes and 40 seconds in duration to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, enabling the Soyuz to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. Some 27 minutes after the deorbit burn at 6:46 a.m. Central Time, the pyrotechnics will allow the separation of the 3 sections of the Soyuz vehicle, the orbital module on top, the instrumentation and propulsion module at the bottom, leaving just the descent module with the crew on board to return to Earth. Heat around the heat shield of the Soyuz will build up to 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. That will be followed by the command to open up the parachutes at 6:58 a.m. Central Time. First, the pilot parachutes will be deployed, the second of which will extract the drogue chute, and then the main parachute that will slow the Soyuz to a descent rate of just 7.2 meters per second. Just a few feet above the landing site and touchdown, the soft landing engines will fire a final thruster firing to slow the Soyuz down. Landing scheduled at 7:12 and 14 seconds a.m. Central Time at a point around 78 statute miles to the northeast of the remote town of Jezkazgan. The weather at the landing site has deteriorated since we last spoke to you a short time ago during our undocking broadcast. The overcast ceiling has reduced even further to less than 700 feet. With thick overcast reported. The temperatures have dropped a bit, and there are snow flurries at the landing site. So the decision was made by the search and recovery forces to try to expedite the crew's extraction from the Soyuz vehicle once it lands at the landing site, to get them immediately into 3 helicopters, 1 for each crew member, and to return not to Karaganda, but rather to the Jezkazgan airport, a shorter distance away. That would be a flight of about perhaps around 35 minutes or so in length from the landing site to Jezkazgan. As a result, the NASA plane that will ultimately take Kjell Lindgren and Camilla Yui back to Houston, and the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center plane that is to fly Ali Kononenko back to his training base and his home in Star City, Russia. Those 2 planes are being relocated from Karaganda to Jezkazgan. There will be no setup of a medical tent and no field testing for Camilla Yui at the landing site. Only 4 helicopters likely to deploy from Jezkazgan, carrying a minimal number of support people representing the International Space Station Program Office and flight surgeons who will attend to the crew once they land and are extracted from the spacecraft. So once again, the decision made to expedite the extraction of the crew once they land at the landing site northeast of Jezkazgan because of deteriorating weather conditions at the landing site, which is not unusual for this time of the year in December. However, the search and recovery forces, called the Rosaviatsa Search and Recovery Forces, the Civil Air Patrol, if you will, they are experts at night landing or recovery operations. They have GPS capability. They will be using VHF locator beacons, satellite phones, and GPS ground tracking and fixed-wing aircraft surveillance capability, as was the pre-landing plan, knowing that landing at night, only the 6th night landing for a Soyuz in space station history, and the first post-sunset landing would be challenging in the month of December, but it was deliberately decided to bring this crew home at this time, as opposed to later in the month, to make way for the launch of a Progress resupply vehicle on December 21st to the International Space Station. So once again, we're counting down less than 11 minutes from now, coming up on the 10-minute mark, to the deorbit burn that will start the journey home for Kjell Lindgren, Ali Kononenko, and Camilla Yui. When landing occurs, Lindgren and Yui will have completed 141 days in space and aboard the International Space Station. Kononenko wrapping up his 3rd flight into space, having accrued 533 days in space. That will mark him number 13 on the all-time endurance list for human spaceflight. You will be hearing throughout the course of the descent of the Soyuz back to Earth the call sign of Antares, as the Russian flight controllers here in Korolyov will be talking directly to Kononenko, and they have already instructed him to report how the crew is feeling and all of the operations of the vehicle on a continuous dialogue, as long as communications are linked between the Soyuz and ground controllers here in Korolyov through the International Space Station. There will be a point during the descent, as is always the case for a Soyuz landing where communications may drop out. We may have ratty communications or a loss of communications for a certain period of time because of the distance that the Soyuz during its descent back into the Earth's atmosphere will have between it and the antennas on the International Space Station for communications relay. Those communications will be picked up and restored once the Soyuz is within range of 2 Antonov fixed-wing aircraft flying in the vicinity of the landing zone that will serve as a communications and data link between the Soyuz and the Russian flight control team here in Korolyov. So we'll keep you posted throughout the course of the descent on how the operations are going. But just to reiterate, with the weather conditions at the landing site deteriorating in this post-sunset landing that is coming up for this crew, the decision was made a short time ago by the search and recovery forces to limit the number of helicopters that will be deployed from Zhezkazgan to the landing site. Only 4 helicopters will be deployed, 3 of which will be for the crew members themselves, replete with nurses and flight surgeons, as would be the case for a nominal landing activity in which all 12 helicopters would be in play for any daytime landing or a landing in the spring or summertime. So we'll be following the activities and providing any updates as the landing activities are refined and updated throughout the course of the morning.
Москвы МКС в канале SG1.
Moscow Station, Space to Ground 1. Go ahead. The parity error is 0.
Отлично, спасибо.
Excellent, thank you.
Так, и значение АРУ по каналу.
And the RU value on channel TK1 is negative 51.
Отлично, Сергей, спасибо.
Excellent, Sergey, thank you.
One of the external cameras on the International Space Station providing a view of the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft. The deorbit burn now less than 7 minutes from now. Just to reiterate, it will be a 4-minute, 40-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz vehicle through its main engine to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, enabling it to drop out of orbit for a 53-minute entry back into the Earth's atmosphere and a landing at a snowy and windy site just 78 miles northeast of the remote town of Zhezkazgan. So everything is in place. Oleg Kononenko strapped in the center seat of the descent module, the middlemost section of the 3-section Soyuz vehicle. To his left, Kimiya Yui of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, who is board engineer number 1. Strapped into the right seat is NASA's Kjell Lindgren, who are returning home after 141 days in space on a mission that began with the launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan back on July 23rd. At the time of the undocking earlier this morning from the Rosviet module, Expedition 46 formally began aboard the International Space Station under the continuing command of NASA's Scott Kelly, one of the 2 one-year crew members on board the complex. He and Mikhail Kornienko and Sergei Volkov, who arrived on the station back in early September, will be returning to Earth on the morning of March 2nd, Kazakhstan time, the evening of March 1st, U.S. time, wrapping up for what Kelly and Kornienko will be a 340-day mission, a record-breaking mission for International Space Station operations, their 1-year mission now in the home stretch. They will not be a 3-man crew for long, however. Just 4 days from now at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the next trio of residents for the International Space Station will be launched. NASA's Tim Kopra, Roscosmos Soyuz Commander Yuri Malenchenko, and European Space Agency Tim Peake are primed for launch in the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft from the Baikonur Cosmodrome on the afternoon of December 15th at 5:03 p.m. Kazakhstan time, which will be 5:03 a.m. Central Time on December 15th on a 4-orbit, 6-hour trek to the International Space Station to re-up the crew to its normal complement of 6 crew members. Now just 4 minutes away from the start of the deorbit burn, the command, it's an automated entry into the Soyuz onboard computers, a 4-minute, 40-second deorbit burn that will slow the Soyuz down and send it back into the Earth's atmosphere for a landing site 78 miles to the northeast of Jezkazgan. The search and recovery forces on the ground in the form of all-terrain vehicles are already in place at the landing site, ready to move toward the spacecraft just as soon as touchdown occurs. And again, this will be an expedited extraction of the crew because of the weather conditions on the ground and the desire to return the crew as quickly as possible to Jezkazgan, which would be about a 35-minute helicopter flight, 3 of the 4 helicopters being deployed from Jezkazgan, which is 1/3 of the normal complement of helicopters normally deployed for a landing. 4 helicopters will be sent from Jezkazgan to the landing site to pick up the crew. They will be flown in their Sokol launch and entry suits back to the Jezkazgan airport, and then they will undergo medical tests there before they board respective planes, with Lindgren and Yui to board a NASA plane for the flight back to Houston, Kononenko to board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center plane for the flight back to Star City.
Antares, this is Moscow. Go ahead. Is is the G3 indicator on for you now? Not yet, but the command is ready to be sent. Copy.
Less than 2 minutes now until the start of the deorbit burn. We'll be hearing Kononenko read out on the loops the chamber pressure and fuel consumption as the 4 minutes and 40 seconds of the duration of the burn tick away until the engines automatically shut down following the completion of the engine firing that will send this trio back towards its landing site in south-central Kazakhstan. Now just 1 minute away from the deorbit burn, everything looking good aboard the Soyuz vehicle. Again, Kononenko, the Soyuz commander, in the center seat, flanked on his left by Kimia Yui, and on his right by Kjell Lindgren.
Confirmed, standing by. We've sent the G3 command. Transitioning to monitoring. Copy.
Again, you're looking at the view of the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft. Hopefully this view will hold in place to enable us to see the beginning, at least, of the deorbit burn.
Fifteen, 19, 19. Ignition, SKD ignition confirmed. Copy.
And Oleg Kononenko confirming the start of the deorbit burn. It started on time at 6:19 a.m. Central Time. Again, this will be a 4-minute, 40-second retrograde firing, slowing the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, enabling it to begin its descent back toward the Earth's atmosphere.
The first 30 seconds are done. The pressure at the nozzles is 30. Acceleration is 0.45. We have accelerated to 1746. Copy.
Антариса, достаточно.
1 minute. 13 on the nozzles, 0.46. The burn is 28.3. Go ahead. That's sufficient
Время и импульс.
for the burn. The time and the burn, please. Copy.
Антариса, видите?
90 seconds. 40.40.
Принято.
Copy.
Минута 45. 47,9.
105 seconds. 47.9.
Принято.
Copy.
Две минуты. 54.
2 minutes. 54 meters.
Принято.
Copy.
The visiting vehicle officer at Mission Control in Houston reporting that we're midway through the deorbit burn. All the parameters looking very good. Soyuz functioning perfectly at this time.
Две 30, 68, 9.
2.5 minutes. 68.19. Copy.
Две 45, 74, 20.
2 minutes, 45 seconds. 74.20. Copy.
Три минуты. 81,9.
3 minutes, 81.9. Copy.
Три 15, 88,7.
3:15, 88.7.
About a minute and 20 seconds left in the deorbit burn. Everything looking good. Kononenko reports that fuel consumption and chamber pressures are right on the money.
95.03.
Once the burn is complete, the orbital module will be depressurized at the uppermost section of the Soyuz vehicle. That is done so that it is prepared for the pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz vehicle. That will take place at 6:46 a.m. Central Time.
4 минуты. 109.
4 minutes, 109.58.
About 30 seconds left in the deorbit burn. Everything looking good.
4 15, 117.
4:15, 117.05.
4 30, 120.
4.5 minutes, 124.5.
Есть ГК.
Main command confirmed.
Отработали
Copy.
127.90.
127.99.
СДБО. Есть разделение по ГЦ.
Separation confirmed.
Датчик подключен.
This is Mission Control Korolyov, the visiting vehicle officer, reports what Oleg Kononenko discussed just a moment ago, that the deorbit burn is complete and good. Everything went by the book, an excellent deorbit burn of 4 minutes and 40 seconds in duration. So Expedition 45 crew members Kononenko, Lindgren, and Yui are on their way home. The International Space Station is currently flying 253 statute miles over the South Atlantic, moving from southwest to northeast in its orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator.
561 in the descent module. Copy.
Смотрим по странице 110.
Proceeding
250.
per page.
160.
110. 250 on the orbital compartment, 760 in the descent module.
Earlier today, of course, prior to the undocking of this trio of crew members from the International Space Station, Lindgren, Kononenko, and Yui, the hatch closure actually occurred very early this morning at 12:32 a.m. Central Time. Shortly afterwards, Scott Kelly posted to his Twitter account, they arrived in space like baby birds, barely able to fly. Now they soar home as eagles. Great job, Chell and Kimiya.
75.
Scott Kelly posting that tweet of the crew at the hatchway between the Rassvet module and the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft that they climbed into, strapped themselves in, conducted leak checks, then suited up in their Soko launch and entry suits, preparing for the deorbit burn that was just completed, the deorbit burn occurring on time at 6:19 a.m. Central Time.
Ориентация в норме.
Attitude nominal.
Принято.
Copy.
Антарес, продолжайте введение.
Antares, please continue. Keep up with the commentary, even if there is no two-way copy. Pressure is 80 in the habitation, in the orbital compartment, 757 in the descent module.
Flight controllers here in Korolyov urging Oleg Kononenko to maintain a running commentary of activities on board the Soyuz spacecraft. Everything in great shape. Again, the next activity, the depressurization of the orbital module, the uppermost section of the Soyuz vehicle, that will set the stage for the pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz spacecraft, with module separation anticipated at 6:46 a.m. Central Time. We may be passing out of range about 11 minutes from now, 12 minutes from now, at the 150-kilometer mark in altitude of space-to-space VHF voice communication capability between the Soyuz and the Russian Mission Control Center through antennas on the International Space Station, just based on the geographic distance, the geometry of the Soyuz relative to those antennas on the International Space Station. So it would not be surprising or unusual for choppy communications at best, or a loss of communications for a period of time as the Soyuz heads toward the Earth's atmosphere.
Antares, Moscow, could you please keep up with the reports?
Все подзатянулись.
Okay, we tightened our straps.
Принято.
Copy.
Ориентация в норме.
The attitude is normal.
Принято.
Copy.
Давление ВСА стабильно, да?
Is the SR pressure stable?
Давление ВСА 759.
759 is the SR descent module pressure. Copy.
Нового отсеке 0.
It's 0 in BO, in orbital module. Copy.
this is Mission Control Korolyov. All quiet on board the Soyuz spacecraft following the on-target deorbit burn that occurred at 6:19 a.m. Central Time. A 4-minute, 40-second retrograde firing to begin the Soyuz's descent back toward the Earth's atmosphere. The next milestone is expected about 15 minutes from now. That will be the separation of the three modules, the three components of the Soyuz spacecraft, the orbital module, the descent module in which the crew is located, strapped in their respective seats, and the instrumentation and propulsion module. The separation of those three modules conducted automatically through the triggering of pyrotechnics that hold the three sections together. The upper and lower section go off to burn in the Earth's atmosphere. The descent module, of course, has its heat shield pointed toward the direction of travel that will serve as an ablatant to repel temperatures that will build up around the Soyuz to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. It will create a plasma trail. The crew on board the International Space Station, Scott Kelly, the commander of now Expedition 46, the fourth of 4 increments that will span his year in space along with Mikhail Kornienko, will be positioned in the station's cupola, armed with high-powered lenses to try to capture a picture of the Soyuz, as well as some video, perhaps, of it descending into the plasma region. It will be about a 5-minute transit through that plasma region, the most visual opportunity until the Soyuz passes out of range and distance from the International Space Station.
Ориентация в норме.
The attitude is within the norm.
The latest coordinates calculated by the flight controllers here at the Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside of Moscow. The latest coordinates for landing would be 48 degrees, 48 degrees, 27 minutes north latitude, 69 degrees, 7 minutes east longitude, again placing the landing site about 78 statute miles to the northeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. The current plan is to try to expedite the crew's extraction from the Soyuz once it's landed. They will do that. The search and recovery forces, Rosaviatsa, will do that by the current plan of deploying only 4 out of 10 helicopters pre-positioned in Zhezkazgan. 4 of those helicopters all bearing critical recovery personnel, plus flight surgeons and nurses for medical assistance for the crew, who will soon be feeling the first tug of gravity on their bodies since their launch back on July 23rd, 141 days ago. The 4 helicopters will be deployed to the landing site. The crew will be extracted. No medical tent will be set up. The 3 crew members will be placed in each of 3 respective helicopters for the flight back to Zhezkazgan, where both a NASA plane and a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center plane are in the process of being flown from Karaganda to the northeast of the landing site to Zhezkazgan. This all designed to try to expedite the recovery of the crew in somewhat deteriorating weather conditions with blowing snow and extremely cold temperatures, but moreover, low ceilings, very, very low ceilings of thick overcast over the landing site region in which the Soyuz will be descending a short time from now. Everything is going perfectly on board the Soyuz, all of its systems in excellent shape, no issues being reported by Kononenko in his communications with the flight controllers here in Korolyov. We're inside 11 minutes from the anticipated time of the pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz vehicle. That will occur at an altitude of 87 miles above the Earth, occurring some 27 minutes following the successful deorbit burn that has begun the Soyuz's return back toward the Earth's atmosphere. Once the modules have separated, the Soyuz, of course, will be pointed in the correct direction with its heat shield in the direction of travel. That will be followed by entry interface, the actual entrance into the first sensible traces of the Earth's atmosphere at an altitude of 62 miles above the Earth, where temperatures around the Soyuz will build to their typical 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, creating a plasma trail for about 5 minutes as the Soyuz enters the thickest portion of the Earth's atmosphere. Flight controllers reporting back to the visiting vehicle officer, Heidi Paris, in the flight control room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, that per the plan, we have passed beyond the range of guaranteed communications between flight controllers here in Koryov at the Russian Mission Control Center and the crew on board the Soyuz vehicle. This is typical. Sometimes ratty communications are possible. Sometimes there is a loss of communications altogether. There's a shot of Heidi Paris at her console watching the data, talking to her counterparts here in the Russian Mission Control Center as they follow the data that is being received from the Soyuz spacecraft as it barrels toward its landing site some 78 miles to the northeast of the town of Jezkazgan in south-central Kazakhstan. Once again, you're looking at a view from the Russian Mission Control Center, now a view from the International Space Station as it travels over northern Africa. This view of the Russian Mission Control Center from a camera in the back of the balcony area overlooking this cavernous flight control room. Soyuz landing now just 32 minutes away. Everything continuing to go well on board the spacecraft.
Antares MCC Moscow.
Что Москва? 15:40, 30.
MCC Moscow 15:40, 35. We closed our visors and sent the command F3.
Принято, Антарес.
Copy, Antares.
Давление ВСА 762.
The SR pressure is 762 millimeters.
Принято.
Copy.
As the Soyuz now just minutes away from the separation of its three modules through automatic command from its onboard computers, we continue to receive great pictures from Scott Kelly, the commander of the International Space Station, on his Twitter account. This one just posted fair winds and following seas, my friends, and a safe landing. Kelly posting that after showing the Soyuz TMA-17M as it undocked from the Rosviet module of the International Space Station, the undocking occurring at 3:49 a.m. Central Time, just about 3 hours ago. That preceded the Soyuz executing a separation burn to enable it to open up a distance of some 12 kilometers away from the International Space Station. That was the precursor to the deorbit burn, the firing of the Soyuz engines, and a braking maneuver, a retrograde maneuver, to begin its descent back into the Earth's atmosphere. Once again, this picture on Scott Kelly's Twitter account, @station CDR Kelly, where he has posted literally hundreds of pictures in the first 9 months of his year in space. As we stand by for confirmation of the module separation that's expected just a couple of minutes or so from now, we have reports from Zhezkazgan that the first of the 4 helicopters that are anticipated to depart for the landing site for an expedited extraction of the crew and a return to Zhezkazgan as opposed to Karaganda, the first of those 4 helicopters with flight surgeon personnel, medical personnel on board, has departed Zhezkazgan. Very low ceilings, very windy conditions noted in south-central Kazakhstan at this hour. This landing is occurring an hour and 43 minutes after sunset, the first post-sunset landing, with sunset essentially calculated from civil twilight to midnight. A pre-dawn landing would be calculated from midnight to sunrise. In all, the 6th night landing, or the 6th landing in darkness, the first since November of 2012, when Sonny Williams, Yuri Malenchenko, and Aki Hoshide landed in their Soyuz spacecraft 1 hour before sunrise to conclude Expedition 33.
Есть СГ Разар, есть Туль-2.
Принято.
Inaudible.
Минута.
So we're less than a minute away from the anticipated separation of the three sections of the Soyuz vehicle. Oleg Kononenko, the Soyuz commander, strapped in the center seat of the Soyuz, flanked on his left by board engineer number 1 Kimiya Yui of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, and Kjell Lindgren to the right of Kononenko as board engineer number 2.
Есть разделение.
We have separation. Copy, Antares.
Oleg Kononenko confirming a nominal module separation. So the descent module now flying on its own, the orbital module and the instrumentation and propulsion module having been discarded on time at 6:46 a.m. Central Time. We're now about 2.5 minutes away from entry interface, where the spacecraft will enter the Earth's atmosphere at an altitude of 62 miles, creating a plasma trail. The Soyuz with its heat shield pointed in the correct direction to repel and ablate the heat that will build up around the spacecraft for about 5 minutes in duration. While we continue to await further reports from Oleg Kononenko, the Soyuz commander, with the Soyuz heading toward its landing about 24 minutes from now on the south-central steppe of Kazakhstan post-sunset, the International Space Station flying 253 statute miles above the Caspian Sea, as we've lost our downlink television capability for the time being through the tracking and data relay satellite system. So we're continuing to stand by for additional voice reports from Kononenko. The next milestone is coming up in less than 2 minutes, and that is entry interface as the Soyuz hits the Earth's atmosphere. And at that point, the three crew members on board the station will begin to feel the first pull of Earth's gravity on their bodies since their launch 141 days ago, back on July 23rd. At about 6:56 this morning, the crew will have their maximum G loads being imposed on them, some 4 to 5 Gs at an altitude of 20 miles above the Earth. And as we stand by for the landing of Lindgren, Kononenko, and Yui, once again, Expedition 46 is formally underway on board the International Space Station under the continuing command of Scott Kelly, the NASA astronaut who has now logged more days in space than any other American astronaut. One of the two one-year crew members on board the complex, along with Russian cosmonaut Mikhail Kornienko and cosmonaut Sergei Volkov, who will be the Soyuz commander in March to bring home Kelly and Kornienko and wrap up their year-long mission aboard the International Space Station. Volkov arrived on board the complex in early September. This crew will be joined just 4 days from now by the next trio of residents who will fly to the International Space Station. The next three crew members are comprised of Yuri Malenchenko, a veteran about to make his 6th flight into space, a veteran astronaut Tim Kopra, the NASA flight engineer, and European Space Agency flight engineer Tim Peake, who's about to make his first flight into space as the second British citizen ever to fly in space and the first to fly to the International Space Station. They will launch an hour before sunset at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on December 15th for a 4-orbit, 6-hour jaunt to the International Space Station to bring the station back to its full complement of 6 crew members. Kopra, Peak, and Malenchenko will spend a half year on board the orbital laboratory.
Unintelligible.
Although we have entered a period of ratty communications with the crew on board the Soyuz, which was expected, we fully anticipate that those communications will improve as the Soyuz nears its landing site in Kazakhstan, with the relay to be established through an Antonov fixed-wing aircraft that is flying in the vicinity of the prime landing site just to the northeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. That Antonov relays both voice and data communications from the Soyuz vehicle to the flight control team here at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. The crew entered the Earth's atmosphere about 4 minutes ago. They should be exiting the plasma region about 3 minutes from now. Maximum G-forces built up around the crew, their first tug of gravity against their bodies. The maximum G-loads just a few minutes from now to peak at about 4 to 5 Gs that they have trained for, of course. And after that, the next big activity, about 5 minutes from now, the command to open the parachutes. 2 pilot parachutes will first be deployed, the second of which will extract a drogue chute. The drogue chute then to be released. It measures 24 square meters, slowing the Soyuz down from a descent rate of 230 meters a second to just 80 meters a second. That will be followed by the release of the main parachute, which covers an area of 1,000 meters, slowing the Soyuz to a descent rate of 7.2 meters per second. Its harnesses first allowing the Soyuz to descend at an angle of 30 degrees, that designed to expel residual heat from its descent into the Earth's atmosphere. Then the Soyuz will be canted to a straight vertical descent in preparation for the firing of its soft landing engines just a couple of feet above the surface of the Earth and the landing site in south-central Kazakhstan. Landing is expected at 7:12 and 14 seconds a.m. Central Time. Again, the landing site about 78 statute miles northeast of Zhezkazgan, where a reduced number of helicopters, just 4, are in the process of being deployed from the airport in Zhezkazgan to the landing site, about a 35-minute helicopter ride to try to expedite the crew as they are extracted from their Soyuz vehicle and placed in the helicopters to return to Zhezkazgan and to be greeted by both a NASA plane and a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft that are in the process of being relocated from what was the staging city in Karaganda down to the new staging point in Zhezkazgan itself.
$456. 456 is the G load. Copy, Antares. 457.
Принято.
Copy.
Вид спуска. Атмосферный хронос.
What about the
Плюс 7.
miss +7?
15:51 есть.
15:51 is the time of re-entry.
4:47 максимум.
4:47 is the G load maximum.
Перегрузка 3,6.
So the 3.6 is the G load now. It is decreasing. Copy.
The translation of communications having been restored with Soyuz Commander Oleg Kononenko, everything continuing to go very well, reporting that they are now feeling their maximum G load of about 4 to 5 Gs, and we are now less than 2 minutes away from the expected command to begin the opening of the parachutes as the Soyuz descends to its landing site again just to the northeast of the town of Zhezkazgan in Kazakhstan. This animation depicts the deployment of the parachutes. Once again, the pilot parachutes extracting a drogue chute. The drogue chute then followed by the extraction of a main parachute, a billowing parachute that covers an area of about 1,000 meters, slowing the Soyuz to a descent rate of about 7.2 meters per second. Right before touchdown, the soft landing engines will fire and a final braking maneuver, and the Soyuz will be home.
Copy.
9, влево 30.
09 is the integral 30 to the left.
1,16.
1.16 is very strong vibration. 09 is the integral.
Ну, как принимаете маяк?
How do you copy?
Да, на связи.
Beacon, Beacon, how do you copy us? We copy you loud and clear. We copy you good.
Все, прослушаю звонок от открытия системы.
Unintelligible.
Just about 13 minutes away from the anticipated landing of the Soyuz vehicle, standing by for confirmation of chute deploy. The voice communications should be established a short time from now between the Soyuz and the search and recovery forces flying in the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft in the vicinity of the landing site to the northeast of Zhezkazgan.
Unintelligible. We are feeling good. Copy, Antares.
Какой тренинг идет? Проваливается. Слушайте. Направо его.
Although we have not received
Tilting.
confirmation of chute deploy, The response from the interpreter here in the Russian Mission Control Center of wonderful was a call from Kononenko, which would seem to indicate a nominal shoot deploy. We're still standing by for confirmation of that.
Breaking up.
Everything continuing to go on schedule, with the Soyuz expected to touch down about 11 minutes from now at a point
7, and we're feeling fine.
to the northeast of Zhezkazgan. Kononenko now reporting that the crew is feeling fine, a clear indication that the chutes were deployed as the Soyuz continues to descend toward its landing site.
And we're feeling fine. That's good.
Kjell Lindgren and Kimia Yui just minutes away from completing 141 days in space, and the same aboard the International Space Station. Oleg Kononenko minutes away from completing his third flight into space, and an aggregate total of 533 days in space, placing him 13th on the all-time endurance list. The Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft with Kononenko, Lindgren, and Yui on board, descending under its main parachute, gently descending toward its landing site, which is shrouded in thick overcast, windy conditions, blowing snow on the ground. The landing site conditions resulting in a decision a few hours ago to reduce the number of helicopters deployed from Zhezkazgan to the landing site. Normally, 8 out of the 12 Russian Mi-8 helicopters go to the prime landing site. 2 go to the midpoint between the nominal and the ballistic landing sites in the event of a contingency, which is not the case today. 2 helicopters are deployed near Baikonur at the front end of the ballistic landing zone. But of those 8 prime helicopters, only 4 were deployed in the post-sunset hours as the sun set on the town of Zhezkazgan because of the deteriorated landing conditions to try to expedite the extraction of the crew once it lands. The 3 crew members will be extracted from the Soyuz, loaded into each of 3 separate helicopters, 3 out of the 4 that will make it to the landing site, and they'll be flown in their Sokol launch and entry suits directly back to Zhezkazgan for medical testing, and then to ultimately fly to their respective homes. Lindgren and Yui to board a NASA plane for its return to Houston, Kononenko to board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center plane to fly back to his training base and home in Star City. We're about 6 minutes away from the anticipated landing of the Soyuz vehicle in Kazakhstan to wrap up this mission. This landing only the sixth in darkness for a Soyuz in the space station era. The fifth, 5 of those 6 landings were pre-dawn. This is the first post-sunset landing, all coordinated by Roscosmos, the Russian Federal Space Agency, and the Rosaviatsa search and recovery forces that have vast experience in recovering crews at night as well as civil air patrol nighttime operations. We now have reports from the landing site that the search and recovery forces have spotted the Soyuz TMA-17M under its main chute with its blinking light very visible. So a good sign, as we are now just about 4.5 minutes away from touchdown.
I'm intelligible. Just about 3 minutes until touchdown, everything continuing to go very smoothly. Once again, to recap, at 12:32 a.m. Central Time, the hatches were closed between the Rassvet module and the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft as the departing crew said farewell to Scott Kelly, Mikhail Kornienko, and Sergei Volkov. Leak checks were completed both on the Soyuz vehicle. The crew suited up in its Sokol launch and entry suits, conducted leak checks on those suits. Everything went fine. And then at 3:49 a.m. Central Time, with the hooks open, springs pushed off on both sides of the docking interface between the Soyuz and Rassvet, allowing the Soyuz to undock. Again, undocking occurring on time at 3:49 a.m. Central Time. The Soyuz moving to a position 12 kilometers away from the International Space Station, where it executed its deorbit burn of 4 minutes and 40 seconds in duration at 6:19 a.m. Central Time, resulting in the Soyuz dropping out of its orbit and heading toward a landing site that is complete with a thick overcast in this mid-December time frame, snowy and blowing wind conditions at the landing site, precipitating a
expedited recovery scenario that is about to unfold for the search and recovery forces. Only 4 helicopters being deployed from Jez-Kazgan to the landing site to recover the crew. 3 of those helicopters will be for the crew members themselves to fly about 35 minutes or so from the landing site back to the Jez-Kazgan airport, where they will ultimately be greeted by other recovery personnel and the 2 aircraft that will soon fly them back to their respective homes in Houston and in Star City on the outskirts of Moscow. So with the search and recovery forces in place, we are standing by for confirmation of touchdown. The Antonov fixed-wing aircraft flying in the vicinity of the landing site will first receive word. Once again, standing by for confirmation of the Soyuz landing to the northeast of Jez-Kazgan. That should be occurring almost any moment now, bringing home Oleg Kononenko, Kjell Lindgren, and Kamiya Yui, following 141 days in space. This is Mission Control Korolyov, again standing by for confirmation of the landing of the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft. The last word we received was about 7 minutes ago as the Soyuz descended under its main parachute that the search and recovery forces at the landing site had spotted the light flashing on the Soyuz vehicle. Very overcast conditions and windy conditions at the landing site, so we continue to stand by for landing confirmation. This is Mission Control Korolyov. Again, we're standing by for confirmation of the landing of the Soyuz vehicle that should have occurred about 5 minutes ago. Again, standing by for confirmation from the flight control team here in Korolyov with any reports to be received from the search and recovery forces at the landing site where the weather conditions are fairly harsh in this post-sunset landing scenario. This is Mission Control Houston. We now have confirmation that the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft has landed. The search and recovery forces reporting from the landing site that the Soyuz was found on its side, not unusual for a windy landing condition. That report was relayed at 7:18 a.m. Central Time. However, that's not indicative of what the official landing time might have been. The Soyuz was targeted to land at 7:12 a.m. Central Time. We do not have an official landing time at this point, but the words up on the front screen here in the Mission Control Center, Jest Posadka, they've landed. And that is now confirmed by the search and recovery forces in Kazakhstan, northeast of Zhezkazgan, that the Soyuz TMA-17M is back on Earth with Oleg Kononenko, Kjell Lindgren, and Camilla Yui. This is Mission Control Korolyov. Once again, we have confirmed through the search and recovery forces and flight controllers here at the Russian Mission Control Center that the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft with Oleg Kononenko, Kjell Lindgren, and Kamiya Yui on board has landed northeast of Zhezkazgan in Kazakhstan. The unofficial landing time was at some point in the vicinity of 7:12 a.m. Central Time, but that is not confirmed, so we do not have an official landing time, may not get an official landing time anytime soon. That's the best estimate that we can provide at this time, and we'll provide updates as they are received. The trio landed after 141 days in space and aboard the International Space Station following their launch back on July 23rd. Kononenko, the only multiple-time flyer in this crew, has landed back on Earth, completing his third flight into space with an aggregate total of 533 days in orbit, 13th on the all-time endurance list. This crew logged 2,256 orbits of the Earth and 59.6 million miles traveled during their nearly 5 months away from the planet. With the weather conditions having deteriorated several hours ago, creating thick overcast and very low decks of clouds, the decision was made by the search and recovery forces not to deploy all of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters from the staging city in Zhezkazgan, Kazakhstan, but rather only a quartet of helicopters with critical personnel, mostly medical personnel, to the landing site. They are either en route or just about to arrive there as we speak. The plan is for an expedited extraction from the crew. Again, the Soyuz landed, or was at least found on its side after touching down some 78 statute miles to the northeast of Zhezkazgan. The reports continuing to be received, and we'll be awaiting for the extraction of the crew. It has yet to be determined whether or not we'll have any video from the landing site that we are typically accustomed to seeing. The weather conditions fairly sporty this evening at the landing site. It's a post-sunset landing, the touchdown occurring about an hour and 43 minutes after sunset. Again, the plan is to extract the crew. No erection of the medical tent, no medical exams at the landing site. They'll simply get the crew out of the spacecraft, load them onto 3 helicopters, one for each crew member, and fly some 35 or so minutes back to Zhezkazgan, where they will there at the airport in Zhezkazgan receive their medical examinations. The Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft and a NASA Gulfstream jet that were located at the Karaganda airport to the northeast of the staging site. The 2 craft are to be flown or are in the process of being relocated from Karaganda to Zhezkazgan to pick up the crew once the landing and recovery operations are complete. The search and recovery forces at the landing site report that 2 of the helicopters deployed from Zhezkazgan are now about to land near the capsule. 2 others are en route. So recovery operations, once again, on an expedited fashion, are well underway to get on with the process of extracting Kononenko, Lindgren, and Yui from the Soyuz vehicle that was spotted on its side, which is very, very typical for a Soyuz landing in windy conditions where the Soyuz touches down and then the chutes are caught by the wind and would pull the Soyuz onto its side. While the operation is ongoing to recover the 3 crew members that landed aboard the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft a short time ago, we do not have an official landing time. Our best guesstimate is somewhere in the neighborhood of 7:12 a.m. Central Time. While this activity is ongoing, down at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, well to the southwest of where this trio of crew members landed, we are on the eve of the mating of the 3 stages of the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft, the booster that will be used on December 15th, just 4 days from now, to launch the next trio of crew members to the station, that being NASA's Tim Kopra, Roscosmos Soyuz commander Yuri Malenchenko, and European Space Agency flight engineer Tim Peake. Their launch again scheduled on December 15th on a 4-orbit 6-hour rendezvous to reach the International Space Station and join the Expedition 46 crew now in progress under the command of NASA's Scott Kelly. The reports from the search and recovery forces again indicate that 2 helicopters have now landed at the site where the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft touched down a short time ago. The ground-based all-terrain vehicles are almost at the site of the capsule, so that's a good sign. Recovery operations well underway under overcast skies in this post-sunset time frame at the landing site, with blowing wind and snow reported as well. this is Mission Control Koryoff. Once again, we're standing by for more reports from the landing site to the northeast of Zhezkazgan, where the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft landed a short time ago with Ale Kononenko, Kjell Lindgren, and Kamiya Yui on board, following 141 days in space and aboard the International Space Station. We do not have an official landing time. We are not expected to get an official landing time anytime soon because the spacecraft descended into thick clouds and overcast at the landing site. The last report we got before touchdown was confirmed was just a few minutes before landing, when the search and recovery forces reported seeing the strobe light on the outside of the Soyuz flashing as it descended under its main parachute. The unofficial landing time, of course, was expected at 7:12 a.m. Central Time, but again, there is no official landing time yet obtained from the Russian Mission Control Center here in Koryoff or from the search and recovery forces at the landing site itself. The Soyuz spacecraft touched down, and then, of course, heavy, thick, blowing winds, very brisk winds at the landing site resulted in the chute dragging the Soyuz onto its side, which is very typical for a Soyuz landing in windy conditions. Two of the search and recovery helicopters have arrived at the spacecraft to begin the process of an expedited extraction of the crew. Two other helicopters are en route to the landing site, mostly occupied by medical personnel. Also, a group of all-terrain vehicles are heading toward the landing site itself. We do not know when we might get landing video, if at all, from the landing site. Once again, this operation taking place post-sunset in darkness under fairly harsh conditions. The temperatures at landing time were expected to be about 26 degrees Fahrenheit with a wind chill factor of about 9 or 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and very, very brisk winds that prompted a decision several hours ago by the search and recovery forces not to deploy all of the helicopters for the search and recovery team to try to expedite the extraction of the three crew members from the spacecraft to get them placed in their Sokol launch and entry suits as quickly as possible in the helicopters, and to fly not to Karaganda, but rather to Zhezkazgan, a much shorter flight of about 35 minutes or so, so that post-flight medical tests can be conducted in the quickest time possible. So again, no medical tent will be erected, and we are expecting a very expedited recovery of the crew once the appropriate recovery personnel are on site to begin the process of extracting the crew as quickly as possible.
Нормально? Нормально?
Just to recap, a reduced number of search and recovery forces personnel at the landing site to the northeast of Zhezkazgan are in the process of arriving around the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft that landed through thick clouds and very brisk winds with temperatures about 26 degrees Fahrenheit. We do not have an official landing time. The landing itself was confirmed by the search and recovery forces at 7:18 a.m. Central Time. That does not necessarily reflect the exact landing time itself. The landing was scheduled to take place at 7:12 a.m. Central Time, but again, we can only approximate that that was the landing time. We do not have and are not expected to receive anytime soon an official landing time. So for the moment, we'll have to call it around 7:12 a.m. Central Time without an official and exact time to be provided at this point. With the recovery of the crew in work northeast of Zhezkazgan, the commander of the International Space Station, one-year crew member Scott Kelly of NASA, has provided us with a series of great photographs of the Soyuz departure from the station, and this view of the Soyuz entering the Earth's atmosphere some 27 minutes after its deorbit burn, with the words from Kelly on his Twitter account, the remnants of hashtag Soyuz's fiery plunge through the atmosphere. Congratulations on a successful landing. Hashtag Soyuz TMA-17M. So a spectacular photograph. Scott Kelly was in the station's cupola as he sent out that tweet at his account, which is at Station CDR Kelly. Again, a great photograph of the Soyuz descent module entering the Earth's atmosphere with the beautiful glow over the horizon. Kelly, Sergei Volkov, and fellow crew, one-year crew member Mikhail Kornienko, now a three-man crew at the start of Expedition 46, the fourth of four expeditions spanning the year-long mission of Kelly and Kornienko aboard the International Space Station. They will not be a three-man crew for long. Just 4 days from now, Tim Kopra of NASA, Yuri Malenchenko of the Russian Federal Space Agency, and Tim Peake of the European Space Agency will be launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan atop the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft to begin 6 months aboard the International Space Station. Their launch scheduled at 5:03 a.m. Central Time, 5:03 p.m. at the launch site of the Baikonur Cosmodrome, just 4 days from now on December 15th, to re-up the Expedition 46 crew to its full complement of a half dozen residents.
А мы не будем вставать? Вообще не будем. А куда сейчас? На вертолет. Будем переодеваемся в вертолет. Еще? Ну смотри, как так? А ты сейчас... Ну надо уйти в пылку. Давай. Я перемерим, пойдем. Звоните, буду. Звоните. Можно чуть-чуть. Давление будет.
1 на 55, пульс 86. Пульс 86.
Может просто лечь. Ну давай, тогда подождем. Хотя бы кинет.
Не видно было.
This is Mission Control Korolyov. We have received reports that the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft that was positioned in Karaganda, the original staging city for today's recovery of the Soyuz crew, that aircraft is now airborne from Karaganda to Zhezkazgan. That's about an hour-long flight, perhaps a little bit longer, maybe an hour and a half. To reach Zhezkazgan, they will be followed by the NASA Gulfstream jet. They will be pre-positioned to receive the three crew members once they are returned to Zhezkazgan by helicopter from the landing site in this expedited recovery operation that's underway.
Осторожно, там эти.
Дадите, пожалуйста.
Веревки.
Осторожно, вход, веревки. Ноги. Прячем в сторону. Да. Спасибо. Ай, дойду здесь. Я 重力感じますよ、重力。いや、本当はね、寒いですけど、皆さん大丈夫ですか？寒くないですか？いや本当にいいですね、これ。冷たい感じの風が。
This is Mission Control Korolyov. The landing of the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft occurred some 35 minutes ago. We do not have an official landing time. It was in the neighborhood of 7:12 a.m. Central Time. The Soyuz landing and then being pulled onto its side under brisk winds at the landing site where the temperatures are in the low 20s Fahrenheit now. At least two search and recovery helicopters are on scene. All-terrain vehicles are moving into place as we await further word on the extraction of the 3 crew members who will be quickly loaded in their Sokol launch and entry suits into the Russian Mi-8 helicopters to be flown back to Zhezkazgan for medical tests and ultimately to board respective NASA and Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft to be flown back to both Houston and Star City.
いやー、本当に素晴らしいですね。地球も、まあ宇宙もいいんですけど、地球もなんかいいですね。いや、この冷たい風もなんかすごい心地いい感じがします。でも皆さんちょっと寒いかもしれないですけどね。大丈夫ですかね。やっぱりでも重力はすごい、こう、ね、環境が変わって、やっぱりね、体もちょっと適応すごい時間かかるのかなって感じしますけど、でも今のところは大丈夫です。そうですね。いや、まあまあ、ゆっくりシャワーでも浴びたいですけど、まあ、それとともにツイッターね、フォローしてくださってる方いっぱいいるんで、すぐツイッターでね、なんか適当なことを紹介したいですけど、Нормально? Нормально, да. Нет, мне отлично. В вертолете очень жарко. О, да? Да, очень. Да, это точно. По какой команде мы? Готовы? Давай вопрос. Короче, он пойдет. Нет, в эту же пемку, нет, он пойдет с командиром, командирую его. А вертолетом? Он до 28. 28. 28.
This is Mission Control Houston. Video now being received from the landing site to the northeast of Zhezkazgan. A good view of Kimiya Yui, who's being hoisted in his reclining chair. He'll be placed in an all-terrain vehicle to be driven to one of the helicopters that has arrived at the landing site. We are also told that Oleg Kononenko was removed from the Soyuz capsule. Kjell Lindgren to be removed next to complete the extraction and expedited extraction of the crew. Very cold conditions at the landing site, the wind very brisk. As a result, the search and recovery forces that did arrive in all-terrain vehicles and several helicopters, just a subset of the normal complement of Russian Mi-8 helicopters. The extraction of the crew is in progress, with Kononenko and Yui having been extracted, and Kjell Lindgren now in the process of being extracted as well. And a good view of Kjell Lindgren, having returned from space 141 days on his first mission. Just 2 days ago, he was at the controls at the robotics workstation in the cupola of the International Space Station using the Canadarm2 robotic arm to grapple the orbital ATK Cygnus resupply vehicle. And 48 hours later, he's back on Earth with his crewmates, Oleg Kononenko and Kamiya Yui, looking hale and hearty. They will be loaded into helicopters for about a 35-minute or so flight to Zhezkazgan, where they will wind up ultimately being flown in a NASA Gulfstream jet. That would be Lindgren and Yui back to Houston. The third crew member, the Soyuz commander, Oleg Kononenko, having completed his third flight into space in 533 days aggregate total, to be flown back to Chkalovsky Airfield near Star City, the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center Air Base and Training Center. He will be flown back to be reunited with his family at his home there.
Travel and everything. I'm doing great. It feels great.
As Lindgren receives initial medical tests on the ground, he has flashed a thumbs up and a big smile, being attended to by Russian medical personnel and his flight surgeon, Dr. Shannon Moynihan, off to the right of your screen. Again, Lindgren, Kononenko, and Yui each will be boarding respective helicopters for a short flight back to Zhezkazgan, where they will undergo more comprehensive medical tests before they board a NASA Gulfstream jet. That would be Kononenko and Yui, to head back to Houston. Kononenko will head back to Star City, Russia, in a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft. Again, our best estimate for a landing time, since we have not received an official landing time, 7:12 a.m. Central Time, but that's not going to be confirmed since the Soyuz landed in very overcast conditions with the search and recovery forces heading towards the proximity of where the global positioning system and beacons carried the Soyuz to. The Soyuz landed upright and then was pulled onto its side by the strong winds at the landing site itself. So again, there is no official landing time. We do not expect to receive an official landing time anytime soon. Our best guesstimate, according to the flight control team here in Korolyov, was 7:12 a.m. Central Time, but that's an official and unofficial approximate landing time.
Ground 4 is private for your conference.
Okay, and I'll log in. I'm going to log in.
Copy that.
Все хорошо. Операцию будем мерить? Второй замер не будем делать? Hey, sweetheart, how are you doing?
a good view of Kjell Lindgren at the landing site. He is talking on a satellite phone, presumably to his family back in Houston. That's typical and commonplace. The landing site is floodlit, but there will be no erection of a medical tent on this particular evening since the landing occurred under rather harsh conditions with thick overcast. The search and recovery forces deploying only 4 helicopters to the landing site and several all-terrain vehicles. Ale Kononenko and Kamiya Yui already having been placed inside all-terrain vehicles to move to respective helicopters nearby. Lindgren getting a chance to get his land legs back a bit. He now will be hoisted in his reclining chair and brought to a helicopter. You can see the flag of Russia in the background blowing in the wind that is gusting at about 27 knots at the landing site. The search and recovery forces will be lifting Lindgren and bringing him to an all-terrain vehicle that will drive just a short distance, a few yards away, to an awaiting helicopter to begin the transport of these crew members back to Zhezkazgan, about a 35-minute flight from the landing site to the staging city, the new staging city, from which the crew will be dispositioned. This is the first post-sunset landing for a Soyuz vehicle in International Space Station history, the 6th night landing overall, the last one occurring an hour before sunrise back in November 2012 when the Expedition 33 crew brought its mission to an end, Sonny Williams, Yuri Malenchenko, and Aki Hoshide. Now Lindgren being lifted to be carried to an all-terrain vehicle and a short ride to a nearby helicopter to begin the flight back to Zhezkazgan.
Голову наклоните. Голову. Сейчас. Ручка. Ручка. Крутить назад, вот так. Давайте сиденье наклоняйте на себя. Сиденье наклоняйте. Внутрь. Не, нормально. Осторожно. Вот так.
Again, you're looking at members of the Russian medical team, NASA flight surgeon Dr. Shannon Moynihan, and other members of the search and recovery forces having placed Kjell Lindgren inside this all-terrain vehicle that will drive a short distance to a waiting helicopter that Lindgren will board for about a 35-minute flight back to Zhezkazgan. Ale Kononenko and Kamiya Yui also have been placed in other helicopters. Those helicopters will take off a short time from now and fly to Zhezkazgan, where the crew will receive more comprehensive medical tests and will board their respective planes to fly back to Houston and to Star City, Russia. Today's landing and the return of the Expedition 45 crew, the Soyuz TMA-17M crew, clears the way now for the launch in 4 days on December 15th of the next trio of residents for the International Space Station, NASA's Tim Kopra, European Space Agency astronaut Tim Peake, and Russian cosmonaut Yuri Malenchenko, to be launched atop the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan at 5:03 a.m. Central Time, which will be 5:03 p.m. in Kazakhstan on the 15th, 1 hour before sunset. They will launch into a trajectory to carry them on a 4-orbit, 6-hour rendezvous to dock to the International Space Station later that evening, and to begin 6 months on board the International Space Station, joining the Expedition 46 crew. It's now Expedition 46 on board the station under the continuing command of Scott Kelly, one of the 2 one-year crew members who, along with Russian cosmonaut Mikhail Kornienko, are well into the 9th month of their year-long mission aboard the International Space Station. Their own landing, along with Russian cosmonaut Sergei Volkov, planned for March 2nd, Kazakhstan time, the night of March 1st, U.S. time. The video we're receiving from the landing site, this live picture just off to the left, is Sean Fuller, who's the NASA Director of Human Spaceflight Operations in Russia, who heads up the NASA recovery team as well as the launch operations in Baikonur, which will get underway in earnest tomorrow as the Soyuz stages of the TMA-19M spacecraft are mated in the integration facility. The rollout of that rocket to the launch pad in Baikonur will be on track to occur starting at 7 a.m. Baikonur time on Sunday. The technicians right behind Fuller are erecting the ladders. They will soon roll and then place upright the Soyuz spacecraft so that they'll use those ladders to gain access through the top hatch of the Soyuz vehicle to extract the minimal amount of cargo and samples that were returned with Lindgren, Yui, and Kononenko as they descended back through the Earth's atmosphere for a landing northeast of Jezkazgan. The landing coordinates that were reported by the search and recovery forces, 48 degrees, 27 minutes north latitude, 69 degrees, 11 minutes east longitude. Again, the landing coordinates as confirmed by the search and recovery forces, 48 degrees, 27 minutes north latitude, 69 degrees, 11 minutes east longitude. Again, we do not have an official landing time. Our best guesstimate from the reports that we received was in the neighborhood of 7:12 a.m. Central Time just about an hour ago. The search and recovery forces confirmed that the Soyuz was spotted on its side at 7:18, just a few minutes after the anticipated landing time. 4 helicopters were deployed to the landing site to begin an expedited extraction of the crew. You saw Kamiya Yui as we received our first live video from the landing site, followed by Kjell Lindgren. Oleg Kononenko had already been extracted from the Soyuz, since the Soyuz commander in the center seat always is extracted first to clear the way for the other two crew members who flank the Soyuz commander in the descent module, then to be extracted in sequence. All the crew members appeared to be hale and hearty. They spent a few minutes getting their land legs back after 141 days of weightlessness before being carried in their respective reclining chairs and loaded into all-terrain vehicles to be driven to 3 helicopters that will transport them shortly, about a 35-minute helicopter ride to the staging city of Jezkazgan, which is just to the southwest of the landing site.
Картинка офигенная.
And a rare view inside the descent module at one of the areas near the control panel of the Soyuz TMA-17M, which was launched back on July 23rd from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, bringing Kononenko, Lindgren, and Yui to the International Space Station. We showed you several pictures that were tweeted by Station Commander Scott Kelly of NASA of the Soyuz vehicle undocking the crew before they closed the hatch to the Soyuz vehicle. It's undocking from the Rassvet module, and a view of the descent module entering into the Earth's atmosphere. We showed you those posted to Scott Kelly's Twitter account at Station CDR Kelly. This view of the descent module descending through the Earth's atmosphere toward its landing site. At the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, at the Cosmonaut Hotel crew quarters, European Space Agency astronaut Tim Peake tweeted, "Welcome home," and he listed the 3 crew members' names. Congratulations on an incredible mission. That coming from European Space Agency astronaut Tim Peake on his Twitter account following the Soyuz landing that occurred about an hour or so ago.
Саша, азимут на антенну. Вот, отворачивай, отворачивай. Заворачивай завтра. Еще один давай. Все, можешь теперь слева. Ничего нету. Саша, стропа. Все, иди еще, иди. Саша, азимут на антенну. Боковой свет давай.
And we are now receiving more video from the landing site. We're trying to ascertain whether this is a replay or whether it's live. We saw a fixed-wing aircraft just a few seconds ago that was airborne. This would appear to be a replay. Just seconds after the Soyuz touchdown and was pulled onto its side by the gusty winds at the landing site that at times reached about 27 knots. So again, we're watching a replay of the initial moments after the landing of the Soyuz TMA-17M spacecraft that occurred just over an hour ago, at approximate unofficial landing time of about 7:12 a.m. Central Time.
In Houston, we're complete with the conference.
Copy that, Scott. Have a great day.
This shows, again, this is a replay of the moments following the Soyuz landing. You can see the snow on the ground, very, very brisk winds that limited the number of search and recovery personnel that made their way to the landing site. the Soyuz was rolled to the appropriate position on its side for the opening of the hatch and the extraction of the crew. Oleg Kononenko, the Soyuz commander, was out first, followed by board engineer number 1, Kimiya Yui, who was in the left seat of the Soyuz descent module for its entry back to Earth. The last one out was NASA's Kjell Lindgren. All of the crew members in good shape, loaded into respective all-terrain vehicles and brought to nearby waiting helicopters to begin about a 35-minute flight back to the staging city of Zhezkazgan.
And then 008 Juliet, an 890 Juliet, and a 892 Juliet, with one correction. The one that was 008 Juliet is actually a Fox 45 Charlie, not 46 Charlie, but 45 Charlie Sierra 008 Juliet. If those are, you know,
Все, я снимаю, все, прости.
So we're standing by for any further reports from the landing site. Once again, all 3 crew members were extracted very quickly from the Soyuz spacecraft. You just saw a moment or two ago a replay of the video in the minutes that followed the actual touchdown of the Soyuz to the northeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. The 3 crew members extracted within minutes of touchdown, all looking hale and hearty, how in respective helicopters for flights back to the staging city in Zhezkazgan, about 78 miles to the southwest of where the crew members returned. You're looking at a view now of the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. The Orbit 2 team of flight controllers took a shift handover a short time ago as the space station crew on board the three Expedition 46 crew members, NASA's Scott Kelly, and Russian cosmonauts Mikhail Kornienko and Sergei Volkov, ended their workday in essence. They sleep shifted to wake up last night to accommodate today's landing operations and the departure of their three colleagues who returned to Earth for a safe landing about an hour and 15 minutes ago. So with all of that activity complete and the three crew members back safely on Earth, the Orbit 2 team will essentially preside over what amounts to a sleep period for the crew, an extended sleep period, with Scott Kelly and his colleagues expecting to have a few off-duty days through the weekend before they resume normal operations on Monday in preparation for the arrival of three new crew members who will launch to the International Space Station on Tuesday of next week, December 15th. Tim Peake of the European Space Agency, Yuri Malenchenko of the Russian Federal Space Agency, about to embark on his sixth flight into space, and veteran NASA astronaut Tim Kopra, who are poised to launch on the TMA-19M spacecraft to the International Space Station at 5:03 a.m. Central Time next Tuesday morning, December 15th. Both aircraft that had been staged in Karaganda, Kazakhstan, the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft and the NASA Gulfstream jet are both en route from Karaganda to Zhezkazgan to pick up the crew members following their medical tests in Zhezkazgan. Oleg Kononenko will board the GCTC plane, the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center plane, for a flight back to Chkalovsky Airfield just outside of Star City, Russia, while Kjell Lindgren and Kimi Yui will board the NASA plane for a flight back to the Johnson Space Center in Houston. This is Mission Control Koryoff as you look at a picture of the International Space Station Flight Control Room across the Atlantic at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. We'll bring our coverage to a close with two programming notes. Coming up at the top of the hour at 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The NASA television video file out of NASA headquarters in Washington will have all of the video of all of the activities associated with the return to Earth of the 3 Expedition 45 crew members, hatch closure, the undocking, and all of the landing operations on the steppe of Kazakhstan. That video file again to air at 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on NASA television. 1 hour later, our space station live broadcast to bring you up to date on all the activities involving not only today's landing operation, but the new Expedition 46 crew under the continuing command of NASA astronaut Scott Kelly. Again, space station live to air on NASA television at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So with Oleg Kononenko, Kjell Lindgren, and Kimi Ayui back safely on Earth after 141 days in space, they are soon to be flown by helicopter to Zhezkazgan and then to their respective homes in Houston and Star City, Russia. They're landing on target, on time, and a success all the way around. With that, we'll call it a day and wish you a great weekend. This is Mission Control Korolyov.